Well, on now to our second debate. We are looking at the auto sector, one of the biggest drivers of the Indian economy. Terrible cliche, I accept that, but it really does play a huge role in pushing our GDP as well. The auto sector is in trouble. Year-on-year sales for two-wheelers and four-wheelers are down. What's causing this? What does it indicate?
Raja says there's been a 40% fall in demand for auto components in the last 3 months, following a slump in vehicle sales. So this manufacturer in Chennai now operates only 70% of his machines.
Actually, we have our production activities has been got lesser by about 30%, for which we are managing with our employees with a staggered working pattern, and we work with an efficiency of about our potential efficiency to about 70% only.
Balachandar feels lucky. Though domestic demand has taken a hit, exports keep him in good stead. However, many in the industry, he says, have laid off workers temporarily.
And everybody is pinning hopes on the budget. So there may be a sudden upsurge also. And it's very difficult to get qualified people now. So maybe they have reduced the number of hours they run, reduced the number of machines they run, and redeployed the people in other work what they were doing outsourcing.
The Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers says sale of cars has dropped by 26% in May compared to last year. Passenger vehicle sale fell by 20% and overall vehicle production is down by nearly 8%. Experts say many postponed buying their first car due to better metro connectivity in cities, cheaper app-based cabs and traffic congestion. The auto industry too is treading cautiously. From April next year, vehicles ought to conform to Bharat 6 emission norms, and there is a growing focus on electric vehicles.
जो हमारी गिरावट आई है मई के महीने में वो -26% है कार के लिए। इससे ज्यादा बड़ी गिरावट 2001 में आई थी। जीएसटी रेट्स को घटाना जरूरी है। 28% का रेट है जो पीनल बेसिक जीएसटी को घटा के उसका जो नेक्स्ट लेवल है पिछला लेवल 18% का वहां पे अगर लेके आए तो इससे बहुत फायदा होगा, अफोर्डेबिलिटी बढ़ेगी और उम्मीद है कि बजट में कम से कम इस चीज को इस पे तवज्जो दिया जाएगा और इसको माना जाएगा। और तीसरा कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स की हम जो सब बात कर रहे हैं वो बिल्कुल घटाया जाए।
The automotive component manufacturers are certainly facing the heat of the automobile industry's slowdown, and many hope the new government's upcoming budget will address this and set the ball rolling, quite literally. In Chennai, Sam Daniel, NDTV.
So what are the implications of the slowdown in the auto industry? We've got a fantastic panel on this. Jagdish Khattar, former MD of Maruti Suzuki, BVR Subbu, the former president of Hyundai Motors India. Sunil Alag joins us, as does my colleague Siddharth Vinayak Pathakkar, the editor of Auto in the NDTV group. Mr. Khattar, let me just bring one statistic to you. Auto sectors, four-wheel sectors. In 2017-2018, we were growing at 14%. It's down to 5%. If you look at two-wheelers, 2017-2018, we were at 15%. It's down to 5%. Simple question, sir. Why?
So I think there are various reasons for this slowdown. Number one, I think there is a general atmosphere of uncertainty. Number two, you are aware that for the last number of months, there is no finance available. Public sector banks and others were already going slow for over a year and a half. They were replaced by NBFCs. Now the NBFCs are having an acute problem as far as availability of funds and other issues are concerned. So when 70% of the vehicles sold are financed, and suddenly you find that there is a squeeze in supply of finance, it is bound to be affected. Then you have a Supreme Court order that the insurance would be for 3 years. I mean, auto sector has just been a victim of so many orders from so many institutions. Supreme Court, Green Tribunal, High Courts, local authorities, and orders which have upset the entire industry and caused disruption. Next is we are jumping from Euro 4 to Euro 6.
Yes.
This is going to increase the prices of cars. And this is going to create a problem, because already you have extra insurance, the finance is not available, and the car prices will increase.
Okay.
Then look at it. 2 years back, 3 years back, our diesel was 40-45%. They are down to 20-25%. It will further go down because for Euro 6 the prices are going up. There is a congestion which was mentioned in the urban areas. Parking is a problem, so people are going slow. You know, one is a first-time buyer. There are two other important categories: people who upgrade a car, and third is who add another car.
Okay,
in the
Mr.
family.
Khattar, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you for a moment over there so that I can bring in some other views. You've listed lots of points. Siddharth Patankar,
okay.
How does this have a cascading impact on tens of thousands of workers in the auto sector? Because you've got your big companies, they've got their regular workers, they've got part-time workers, there's part-time labor, there's full-time labor, there are ancillary industries. How does this have a cascading impact on lakhs of workers across the country associated with the auto sector?
Oh, it's a massive impact, Vishnu, because as you mentioned, it's not just the cars or the bikes that are rolling out, it's everybody who's sort of involved with that process, which goes into hundreds and thousands of people. And we're talking about now a situation where several of the manufacturers have actually instituted production shutdowns. There's been a go slow for some time at some of the manufacturers, and that's a pretty serious situation. There's very few, people like Hyundai, for example, who can compensate some of the slowdown in the domestic market by saying that, hey, look, we'll carry on producing at this pace because we have certain export orders that we can quickly go to. But that's not the norm. That's actually quite rare. And in most cases, it is a slowdown that's been happening for some time now. It's over a few quarters. It's not just what we are seeing today. It's now reached a point where it is pretty severe, which is why you're getting announcements of shutdowns as well, which are not just 1 or 2 days, but going into weeks as well in some cases, Vishnu.
Yeah. Mr. Subbu, how is this something which is also hitting car manufacturers, because there are new safety standards, there are new emission regulations? This is bound to cost car manufacturers, but they're legally obliged to make these changes. But then there is this entire question of how much of that they're willing to pass on to customers. And now you have this situation where credit is low or not available in many cases, and you have to make these changes. What is the net impact on the auto sector?
You know, Vishnu, I think the auto sector sometimes cries wolf far too often. Look at the profitability of the Indian automotive industry and compare it with, let's say, Europe. In Europe, PSA has now said it has a target for profitability of 4.5% for the 2018-2021 period. Compare that with what Maruti or Hyundai makes in India, for instance. Or there's some of the other manufacturers. There's one SUV manufacturer, for instance, who makes almost 100% margin on manufacturing cost. Manufacturers have to decide that, okay, fine, if things are bad, we'll cut pricing and we'll live with lower profits. We don't want 17% profits, 18% profits on turnover. We'll be happy with 4%, 5%, 2%, which is the global norm. Sometimes that may well become the necessary. Instead, what do? They run to the government and say, give us tax stops, give us tax breaks. After all, our cars are not selling. Invariably, what has happened, and for years and years and years, the government announces excise duty cuts. Everyone cuts prices for 1 month, and the next month the prices are up on their inexorable upward move. Now, that kind of a thing is something that I think people have to worry about. I don't believe the prices of Euro 6 should go up as much as as much as what people are already creating this atmosphere, this scaremongering that's happening about pricing. Costing will go up marginally, or in some cases in petrol it will go up, but not so much as to impact the entire vehicle. Even safety standards. I mean, so the cost impact of making a car for India and a car for Europe from the same plant, the cost differential is not very significant. I can say this with absolute clarity on and knowledge of actual costs of the production.
Okay, Mr.
Yes,
all right.
Yes, you'll have the manufacturing companies have to live with lower profitability.
Okay.
That's the only
Sunil
way.
Alag, you've heard two of the finest experts actually in this country in the auto sector with their views on this. Do you believe that there needs to be something drastic done by the government to revive this sector, given its importance in having a significant say in our overall GDP numbers?
You know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know the auto sector as much as I know the consumer business of selling soaps and biscuits and stuff like that. See, the demand for that is growing. So whether you like it or not, it's growing in that segment. Now, auto sector is facing a problem. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, there was the same problem for the white goods, for ACs and for washing machines and all that. And then it was mainly because the sentiment of the consumer at that point of time, I don't want to have the second television. I do not need to change my AC. And then after 1 year, it went on, and when the sentiment goes up, the demand goes up. So I don't see that the government is going to do anything drastic or dramatic for the auto sector at the moment. But I've been talking to a few of the component sector people who depend on, of course, the auto sector growth. You have to divide it in the farm kind of area, which is tractors and things like that. And then you divide it into trucks, and then you divide it into consumer cars. And if all three are being as affected, they're all affected, there's no question about it. But if the farm, you get good monsoons, they are going to go up immediately, I mean, depending upon July or August. So let's wait and see for 3 months or 4 months. There were elections to be held, everybody never knew what was going on. The sentiment was, let's wait and watch, let's not put, because they are not small amounts of money to be spent when you get into a car or anything for a family, whereas for a biscuit or a soap, it's a small sum of money, they're ready to spend on that. So they are all waiting and seeing, and I don't see it getting into a complete groove of failure as some of the car manufacturers are
Mr.
saying.
Subbu, you had a brief point.
For 3 or 4 months. Small benefits they want, sure, let them ride over.
I think
Mr. Subbu
think
quickly, and then Mr. Khattar, yes.
Yeah, I think there is a point, there's an issue that we have to notice. Yes, there has been a slowdown. It's been happening for the last 8 months or so, definitely from October 2018. It's just that manufacturers have been very ostrich-like during this period, stuck their head firmly in the sand and just pushed metal onto dealers' stockyards. Now that there was a time when NBFCs could pick up the tab, and so everything was hunky-dory. Now that the waters have receded and it's low tide, the rocks are visible. It's just that. Its manufacturers have to show a little more discipline in managing inventories. You know, everyone wanted to show fantastic March numbers.
Okay, I've got just 2 minutes left. I want to go back to Mr. Khattar and then Siddharth as well. I'm sorry, I just want to got 2 minutes on the show left. Mr. Khattar, brief question to you. Is this just a temporary phase that we're going to come out of sooner than later?
I don't think it's temporary. There are too many elements which are affecting, and it's not going to go away very soon.
All right, that's important, and therefore, Siddharth, that brings me nicely to my last segue question to you. Is this the best time to buy a car or a two-wheeler?
Right now is the best time, because you will get the kind of discounts you're probably not going to get very much later, because don't forget what points the rest of the panelists, and especially what Mr. Khattar just said. This is now the new normal. We can expect these numbers to kind of stay, and you know, in all the negative sentiment around this, let's still not forget that it's still a huge car market. We're still selling about 4 million cars a year. We're still talking about becoming the third largest car market. I mean, those kind of projections aren't going away. Sure, the growth rate has dropped, and you know, the days of saying we had 10, 12, 15% growth year on year, maybe that's got to go away at some point when things start to get to this kind of scale. And so, yes, from next year, once BS6 comes in, you will have a little bit of a price increase. You will have what I'm calling the new normal. But if you want to buy something and want a great deal on it, of course, this is the best time, because everybody's under pressure to try and deliver volumes, and you can go in there and squeeze out the best possible deal right now.
Yeah, well, perhaps that might be a driver of
I think
segment.
Siddharth, I'll disagree there. You just wait for the monsoons, it will get worse after this. Discounts will grow even higher in the next 2 months. So I think sometime around October will be the right time for people to start buying cars, not now.
That's true.
All right, fair enough, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to speak to all of you always. I'd like to thank all of you very much for us. One way or the other, it's an important part of the economy, which is presently in the doldrums. But I think the point being made is that it's a huge part. Perhaps there is optimism, though Mr. Khattar believes it'll take some time for things to get fixed. Out of time, I'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Reality Check. Till then, goodbye.